Before I pour the wine and start the story, look at this. Cartographers are optimists. They draw the world in ink and paint, giving it clean lines and bright colors. They make it look manageable. But you need to learn to see what is underneath the ink. To the west, the Great Sea, cold, deep, and hungry. To the east and north, the mountain ranges. The Blue Mountains, the Dragon Mountains. Walls of rock that scrape the sky. Do you understand what that means? It means we are trapped. The continent is not an open field. It is an arena, an enclosed pit. There is nowhere to run. Now, look at these veins. This winding line in the south. That is the Yaruga. Remember that name. It is the jaw of the beast. For decades, it was the only thing stopping the south from swallowing us whole. And this one, in the north, the Pontar, it flows through the richest lands and the bloodiest battlefields. Everything above the Yaruga is what we call the north. A collection of squabbling children playing with sharp swords. Everything below it is the empire. Keep this image in your mind, because once the story begins, these borders will shift, burn, and disappear. Now, are you ready? Let's begin. First, King Vizimir II of Redania. They call him the Just. Redania is the breadbasket of the north. It's rich, it's vast, and it has the best cavalry in the world. Vizimir likes to think he is the mastermind of the north. He plays the stern father figure. But here is the truth. He is a man ruled by his own shadows. He relies too much on his spies. Sigismund Dijkstra, the head of Redanian intelligence, probably knows what the king had for breakfast before the king himself does. And Philippa Eilhart? My dear friend, Philippa whispers in his ear so often. I am surprised he has any thoughts of his own left. He wants control. Specifically, he wants to control the free city of Novigrad, because whoever controls the coin controls the world. This puts him at direct odds with his neighbor, Foltest. Next, his neighbor to the south, King Foltest of Temeria. Temeria is the iron heart of the north. It holds the Mahaka Mountains, where the dwarves forge the best steel, and it controls the Pontar Delta. Foltest is complicated. Unlike Vizimir, he is charming. Soldiers love him. Women love him. He has a brilliant tactical mind, but his personal life is a Greek tragedy waiting to happen. He fell in love with his own sister. Yes, you heard me. That affair produced a cursed child, the Striga. For years, the king of Temeria was more concerned with lifting a curse than governing his realm. It makes him vulnerable. It makes him look weak to the nobility. Foltest and Vizimir are natural rivals. They share the Pontar River as a border. Redania wants access to the sea. Temeria wants to keep it. They smile at each other at banquets, but under the table they are kicking each other's shins. These two are the big brothers of the north. If they work together, they could crush any army. But they don't trust each other. And trust is the first casualty of war. Now, look east to the mountains. Here sits King Henselt of Kaidwen. Kaidwen is the largest of the northern kingdoms, but most of it is frozen forest and rock. It is a harsh land, and it breeds harsh men. Their sigil is a unicorn, a magical, pure creature. It's a joke. Henselt is about as pure as a muddy boot. He is a warmonger, a xenophobe. He hates elves and dwarves with a passion that borders on obsession. In his mind, the North belongs to humans, and everyone else should be put to the sword. He doesn't care about the greater good. He only cares about one thing, expanding his borders. Specifically, stealing land from his neighbor to the south. And that neighbor is King Demavin III of Aedirn. Aedirn is rich. It has the Pontar Valley, the most fertile soil in the world. It has Vengerberg, my home city. It has industry, mines, and wealthy guilds. Demavend implies strength, but the man is disappointing. He is intelligent, yes, but he is lazy. He prefers wine and poetry to strategy. He lets his emotions rule him. A king who cannot control his temper is a danger to his people. Henselt and Demavend hate each other. They have been fighting over a strip of land called the Lawmark, or Upper Idian, for centuries. Remember this, because when the real enemy comes, these two idiots will be too busy choking each other to notice the knife at their throats. And finally, the player on the other side of the board. He is not a king. Do not call him that. He is the emperor. Emhyr var Emrys, Dithwen Aden, Yinkarn Aep Morvad. The white flame dancing on the barrows of his enemies. The northern kings fight for land. Emhyr fights for order. He believes the north is a chaotic mess that needs to be civilized. He doesn't want to beat us, he wants to absorb us. He turned a dozen southern kingdoms into provinces of one great empire. He is ruthless, he is patient, and he is looking for something, or someone very specific in the north. 4 squabbling children against one disciplined tyrant. That is the state of the world. That is why the map is about to bleed. Now you know the players. Let's see how they play the game. Before it all happened, the North was actually beautiful. It was a long time ago. Back then, Geralt didn't have that ugly scar across his face. I hadn't yet lost my sight on that accursed hill, and Emhyr var Emrys, he wasn't even an emperor yet. He was just a ghost story whispered in the south. If you walked north from the Yaruga River in those days, what would you see? First, you would pass through Temeria, the land of the silver lilies. Back then, the lilies bloomed wild across the fields, untrampled by army boots. People danced beneath the castle walls of Vizima, not fearing that the sky would rain fire arrows. Merchants shipped boatloads of silk and spices to Novigrad, arguing over prices, not over which god to pray to for salvation. And their king, Foltest, he wasn't the tired old man, you know, worrying about bastards and incest. He was a young conqueror, full of vigor, believing his kingdom would last 1,000 years. Further north, you would enter Edania, the wheat fields there. They shone brighter than gold. It was the breadbasket of the north, a place where no child went to sleep with an empty belly. And listen to me carefully, there were no pyres, no witch hunters. Mages were not hunted like animals. We were the honored guests of kings. We used our magic to drive pests from the farmers' fields, to cure the gout of fat nobles, to turn storms away from the ports. We were the guardians. Even in Cadwen, that frozen wasteland to the east, or in Edern, filled with the smoke of dwarven smelters. It was noisy, yes. It was dirty, yes. But it was alive. It was a golden age for humanity, or so we told ourselves. We thought that was enough. We thought if we killed all the monsters, chopped down the ancient forests to build our fleets, and built our cities higher and higher, we would win the game of survival. But we were wrong, dead wrong. We were so busy looking down at the land we conquered, counting our coins and our castles, that we forgot to look up. We forgot to look at the southern sky, because while we were celebrating our golden age, something dark was gathering on the other side of the Yaruga, something that didn't care about our treaties or our magic. The great Sunday was rising, and it was hungry. You northerners, you have a very quaint idea of what a kingdom is. You think of a king sitting in a castle squabbling with his barons, drinking wine, and occasionally going to war when he gets bored. It is messy, it is personal, it is feudal, but down south of the Amil Mountains, that is not how the world works. There, they don't have kingdoms. They have the Empire. Nilfgaard is not a country. It is a machine. A colossal, relentless machine designed for one purpose: conquest. In Nilfgaard, the merchants don't argue with the Emperor, they fund his armies. The mages don't advise the Emperor. They are leashed like dogs and told when to bark. Even the gods serve the state. They call themselves the elder blood of civilization. They look at us, at the north, and they don't see neighbors. They see barbarians. And the scariest part, in some ways, they are right. Their cities have sewers that actually work. Their laws are harsh but clear. A peasant in Nilfgaard might be a slave, but he won't be killed by a random bandit, because the Empire hangs bandits on sight. But this order comes at a price. The price is submission. Absolute, unquestioning submission to the Golden Sunday. While the Northern kings were playing their little games of thrones, Nilfgaard was swallowing its neighbors one by one. Etolia, Gemera, Vicovaro, ancient kingdoms, erased from the map, their armies absorbed into the Black Legion. They became a snowball rolling down a mountain, getting bigger, heavier, and faster with every conquest. And at the top of this avalanche stood one man. He wasn't always the emperor. Once he was a cursed outcast, a monster in human skin, a hedgehog knight named Duny. I knew him then, or I thought I did. We all thought he was just a tragic figure in a fairy tale. We didn't know that beneath the curse, a tyrant was waiting to be born, Emhyr var Amris. History loves irony. The man who would come to destroy the North started his life as a victim. Decades ago, in the snake pit of the Nilfgaardian court, a coup took place. Emhyr's father was tortured to death by a man simply known as the Usurper. And young Emhyr, they didn't just want to kill him. They wanted to humiliate him, to strip him of his humanity. So, the mages of the south cursed him. They turned the rightful heir into a beast, a humanoid hedgehog. They threw him into the wilderness, expecting him to die like an animal. But Emhyr didn't die. He wandered north. He found refuge in Sintra. He found love. Or at least he found a way to use the law of surprise to bind his destiny to Princess Perfetta. That is where the elder blood enters the story. That is where Ciri comes from. But that is a story for another time. What matters is what happened after he returned south. When the curse was lifted, Emhyr didn't come back as a forgiving prince. He came back as a reckoning. He marched into the capital. He dragged the usurper and his supporters out of their palaces, but killing them wasn't enough. He ordered their graves to be dug up. He ordered their ancestors to be exhumed. He took the headstones of his enemies and paved the floor of his ballroom with them. And then he danced, the white flame dancing on the barrows of his enemies. That is his full title, Dithwen Adan Yin Khan AP Morvad. It is poetic in a grotesque way. From that day on, Nilfgaard learned a lesson. You do not oppose Emhyr var Emreis. You serve him, or you become part of the pavement beneath his feet. He consolidated the south with blood and iron. And once there was no one left to conquer in the south, his eyes turned north to the Yaruga, to Sintra. If you look at the map, Sintra sits right at the mouth of the Yaruga. It is the doormat of the north. For centuries, Sintra was the shield that kept the southern threats at bay. And holding that shield was a woman who had more testosterone in her little finger than most kings had in their entire bodies. Queen Calantha, the lioness of Sintra. I respected her. She was one of the few monarchs who didn't look at a sorceress with fear or lust, but with calculation. She refused to be a broodmare for some foreign prince. She fought her own battles, led her own charges, and raised her granddaughter Ciri to be just as fierce. But Calantha had a fatal flaw. She was northern to the bone. She believed in the old ways. She believed that a heavy cavalry charge could solve any problem. She believed that war was a contest of honor, where two armies met on a field and the bravest won. When the spies whispered that Nilfgaard was massing on her borders, she laughed. "Let them come," she said. "We will drive them back into the sea like we did the pirates of Skellige." She didn't understand. She was playing chess while Emhyr was playing extinction. The Nilfgaardian army wasn't a group of raiders. It was a tide of black steel. 300,000 men. Mages who specialized in fire magic. Archers who could hit a coin from 100 paces. the Battle of Marnadal, it wasn't a butchery. Calanthe's knights charged with glory. They were met with a wall of pikes and arrows that darkened the sun. The pride of Cintra was shattered in a single afternoon. The Leoness was wounded. She retreated to her castle, locking the gates. But deep down she knew the shield had broken. The north was open. There is a specific smell to a burning city. It's not just wood and stone. It's the smell of history turning into ash. The siege of Cintra lasted 4 days, or maybe 4 hours. Time loses its meaning when the sky is on fire. Emhyr didn't want the city. He wanted the girl. He wanted Ciri, so he gave a simple order to his commanders. Burn it all. Filter the ashes. Inside the castle, Queen Calanthe lay dying. Her back was broken, but her spirit was complicated. She knew she had lost. She knew what the Black Ones would do to a captured queen. Nilfgaardian prisons are not known for their hospitality. She called for Ciri, the little lion cub. She looked into those emerald eyes that held the power of the Elder Blood, though neither of them fully understood it then, and she gave her final command. Run, don't look back, find Geralt of Rivia! And then Calanthe did the only thing left for a monarch who refuses to be a trophy. She threw herself from the tower window. Her body hit the cobblestones just as the Nilfgaardians breached the inner sanctum. They found a corpse, not a queen, but Ciri escaped. Chaos, destiny, luck, call it what you will. She slipped through their fingers like water. The massacre that followed was Nilfgaard's way of venting their frustration. They slaughtered the nobles. They enslaved the artisans. They wiped Cintra off the map. When the sun rose the next day, the gateway to the north was gone. The road was open. And there was nothing standing between the Black Army and the soft, fat lands of Temeria and Eden. You would think this would wake the other kings up. You would think they would see the smoke and realize, we are next. But you underestimate the power of denial. While Cintra was turning into a graveyard, what were our glorious protectors doing? King Foltest of Temeria was the closest. He could see the smoke from his southern borders. But he hesitated. His advisors told him, if we march now, we expose our flanks. Let's wait and see. King Vizimir of Redania was busy counting coins. He thought he could buy peace. He sent envoys to Emhyr, offering trade deals, offering neutrality. The envoys were sent back, in pieces and henselt of Kaidwen. That opportunistic swine. He actually thought this was good news. With Cintra gone, he reasoned, Temeria is weakened. Maybe I can grab some land in the confusion. Demavend of Adian was simply too drunk or too incompetent to mobilize his army in time. It was pathetic. It was disgusting. The Nilfgaardian army didn't stop at Cintra. They crossed the Yaruga. They started burning villages in Sodden and Bug. The black tide was rising, and the kings were standing on the shore, arguing about who had the nicest boots. They were paralyzed by fear and greed. They hoped that if they stayed quiet enough, the monster would eat someone else and get full. But monsters like Emhyr never get full. It became clear to us, to the Brotherhood of Sorcerers, that the kings were useless. If the North was to be saved, it wouldn't be by crowns or armies. It would have to be by magic. And that brings us to the most important decision of my life. The decision to go to Sodden Hill. The Brotherhood of Sorcerers. A collection of the most powerful, intelligent, and ego-driven individuals on the continent. Getting us to agree on anything is harder than herding cats. When the news of Cintra's fall reached us, the council was split. Some, like the Artorius Vigo Fringilla's uncle, argued for neutrality. Nilfgaard respects order, they said. Maybe under the Empire. Magic will be regulated but safe. Fools. They didn't see the collars Emhyr put on his mages. But then, a voice rose above the noise. A voice that was charismatic, commanding, and surprisingly inspiring. Vilgefortz of Roggeveen. Oh, I know what he became later. I know the monster he truly was. But back then, he was our hero. He was the one who slammed his fist on the table and said, "If we do not fight, there will be no North left to rule." He rallied us, he shamed the cowards. He convinced Sire de Vries, my mentor, the most rigid adherence to rules I've ever known, that this was a fight for survival. Not all of us agreed. Some fled. Some stayed behind to protect their own towers. But 22 of us, 22 mages stood up. We weren't an army, we were barely a squad, but we had power that could reshape reality. We marched to a strategic hill in Song, a place that overlooked the river crossing. If Nilfgaard crossed that hill, the North was lost. We knew we were outnumbered, 22 against an empire, but we went anyway.